So pre-COVID, I was a director of my own company. I'd been decorating cakes for about 10 years. But when I say decorating cakes, I kind of mean really special ones, really big ones, really fun ones. So I wasn't making Little Billy's birthday cake. We were talking massive events, great big corporate fun, and even celebrity and royalty. So I had great fun. I also travelled the world and I got to take my family all over the world. So I would teach cake decorating to others. I also had a whole range of cake decorating products which sold all over the globe. My life was probably, I would say, at its peak. I never knew that I was going to achieve that. I'd been a police officer before, I'd worked in supermarkets before, but I'd really found a place that I was happy with. I'm annoyed with myself because I should have spotted it sooner. I have a manufacturer in China, and of course that's where it all started. And they were getting the reports, the lockdowns, and I didn't twig that this was going global. How stupid now when you look at it. And we were starting to get issues already with supplies and things kind of coming in. Then in February, I was in Texas, and I'd literally spent the whole weekend with a whole group of cake decorators from all over the world and a massive contingent of northern Italians. And we'd just spent the whole weekend. I remember going with my assistant and not wanting to sniffle on the plane. And I'd kind of got this half cold sort of thing going on. And we were all ready, but it was that jokey kind of thing at that point that had we got something, had we not got something? So we knew something at that point was kind of really on its way. Managed to thankfully get home, but was then very worried because immediately Italy locked down. I've got my eldest son with an immune deficiency. So we already were starting to think about Daniel and what that might mean. And then I couldn't actually believe that it then hit. Mother's Day for me is a massive turning point of all of a sudden, everything I ever knew was now gone. The whole future of my business switched off. Somebody's turned the light off on it overnight and it was gone. I have never been out of work. Not once have I ever been out of work. I remember being at university, and the minute that I came home in the summer holidays, I would go get a suit on, take out my CV, and I would go and find as many jobs as I could. And all of a sudden, I thought about the roof over my head, how the mortgage was going to get paid, how things were going to happen. And I mean, I think that on a daily basis, if I'm honest anyway, because my life, whilst it's all booked in, I've had to go out and find that business. It doesn't just land on my lap. You and I know each other because of the Theatre Royal, but that was an opportunity that I went and sought for myself because it just doesn't, open the door and say, hello, I'm here. So I'm used to kind of going and finding something. But I was really worried, and I knew that I could not find business in the same way again. So if, for instance, the store cupboard is dry, so I say to speak, I will think about a cake and I'll go and create a tutorial and I'll go and put that online, and I hope that people like it and buy it and that I've made myself some money. I couldn't do that anymore because all of a sudden I was very conscious that all of my customers are the customers that want to learn cake decorating, and they've just had all their cake orders cancelled because there is no weddings. There is no birthday parties. There's no events like there were before. And I was really conscious that putting out video tutorials were just going to alienate my customers and rub them up the wrong way. We weren't all thinking about that anymore. People were panic buying toilet paper and pasta, and flour you just couldn't get hold of. So how could I put out a cake decorating tutorial where nobody could get hold of the ingredients to do it with? So overnight I really had to think, and I remember sitting on the sofa and my husband Paul said, there's jobs going at Asda. And there was a note on Facebook, there's jobs going at Asda. So literally without even thinking, I'd logged on to Asda, I'd seen what jobs were available, saw there was one in Nottingham, and filled out the application form there and then. Never gave it another thought. And literally had found myself in a cycle very quickly of an automated system. You've passed that test, please come for an interview. And that was Mothering Sunday. that they asked me in for an interview. It was an automated thing, and I thought, really? Really, Mothering Sunday? Really, you want to do that? Yeah, you do want to do that, because actually you don't know when the next job is coming. And I don't know what is going to happen next month. I felt that the savings I'd got didn't deserve, I hadn't saved them for this. I hadn't saved them to just pay the food bills. That wasn't what I'd got in mind for them. There was the conservatory that might want building. There was, a big birthday, or the kids leaving school, a big holiday, just something else other than just getting by. And I remember going on Mothering Sunday to this interview, and bless them, Asda have been absolutely brilliant, but nobody had thought this thing through. And you were asked to go into a foyer, sign in using the same pen that no one else had quite got their head round yet. Now, in a previous life as a police officer, I've been to pretty gruesome crime scenes, and contamination is always key on my mind as to, what I must touch, what I mustn't touch, how I could contribute to contaminating that scene, or what I take from that scene could contaminate the person I arrested. So I was the only one to have taken my own pen. I was the only person to have got my own drink, or, masks weren't worn at that point, but I got my own gloves. And they very, very quickly realised that there was no room to stand 20 people in a reception area. So they just sent us all home. So I'd gone in, we've already got your details, thanks very much, we'll give you a call. And that was it. But on the Tuesday, I get a phone call from the HR department, when can you start? So it was already evident that potentially no one had looked at my CV, which if they had would have probably told you I was overqualified for the job, which is absolutely fine. I was just expecting maybe more questions of why on earth, do you want this, that or the other? When can you start? And can you bring your passport in to show that you're, legally allowed in this country? I then attended on the Tuesday, dropped that off, got told to return the next day. And apparently an induction that should have taken 4 days took 15 minutes in the car park. To be basically then given somebody to buddy up with, whose staff were quite rightly then coming behind us and saying, can you please stand 2 meters apart? Because you're now too close. But how can you learn the job from somebody at a safe distance? It just wasn't working. So I got 15 minutes training. On day 2, I was training the new starters that were starting the next day. And please don't think that's because Asda were incapable. I think it was because I'd shown I'd got initiative and could cope with the job, and they needed help. It felt like the trenches. It felt like a war zone. It felt like you had to literally muck in. Now, don't get me wrong, I was not a paramedic. I was not NHS. I was not on the front line. But I actually felt like I'd got a superhero cape because I was doing the bit that I could do. I applied for the police too. I applied and wrote to the police and said, I've got 10 years service, albeit 10 years ago, but what can I do? I can make phone calls, I can write statements, I can fill out crime reports, I can still do something to help you. And they just said to me, we're not taking rejoiners. If you don't want to know, thanks, but no thanks. Which, to my mind, was ridiculous. I would have loved to have volunteered for the NHS, the delivery service, doing the pharmacy work. But selfishly, I also needed it to pay. I couldn't do anything for free. So I felt that at least doing that was doing something. I was putting Daniel at risk. Every day I would come home and drop the clothes at the front door, go and shower and scrub and do what I could. There were people in full masks at work. There were people who didn't seem to give a damn. Young teenagers I would watch saying, well, it's all right, innit? If I just get it, I'll just bring it in, not bothered. And I was astounded that I would come home and listen to 1,000 people had died today, or And kids didn't get it. They didn't get it. I've not actually spoken about COVID. I've not actually spoken about the past 5 months. I lost my godmother and had to watch a funeral online. I lost my dad. And then my appendix burst. So I ended up in hospital myself. Every day, worrying about your relatives, about your son. We pulled Daniel out of school early, before lockdown, when it was becoming quite clear that lockdown was on its way, within, a week or so. And he's a strapping 6 foot 16-year-old that you'd never know. But you know what? I just can't take that risk. I can't take the risk that he may get something and may not recover. He's had pneumonia twice, and his weak spot is his chest. And that terrifies me. And I think there is a lot of the public that it's not affected yet, and they don't get it. And they go, well, it's all right. Well, it's a bit of a sore throat. You feel like you got flu, but we'll be fine. And I think if it wasn't for Daniel, I'd probably be in that same boat, and I'd almost be having a COVID party. We had a chickenpox party when I was a kid, like encouraging everybody just to come round and kind of get it. But yeah, because I just don't know. And I think the other thing that used to terrify me at Asda was not knowing for 5 days. When you've gone to work and you've done what you've done and you think you've been careful, I don't actually know because I can't see it. I've done everything I could do to protect myself, and I would wipe down my trolley before I touched it. And then when I got to an aisle to pick an item, I was in someone else's way and they would move my trolley. So what if that person hasn't taken as much care? It was one of those teenagers that went, well, if I've got it, I've got it. And yeah, I found it quite stressful actually, constantly being on your guard of what have I touched, what have I looked at, what have I done, what have I not done. And I think now we've unfortunately perhaps got all a little bit too complacent. We're all heading out, we're all enjoying the sun. Have we all gone, yeah, I'm all right at this, I can cope with this, a little bit of hand sanitizer, I'm all right. But cases are rising, and it's inevitable, I think, that we've not seen the worst of it, as in November, October. So until that point, I shall put a smiley face on it and keep paying the bills, keep doing the bit that I can do. I'm taking Daniel out with me a lot, actually, to places, to try and instill in him habits that I can keep saying, mask, have you done this, have you done that, have you done the other, so that when he does venture back to school in September, that he's thought about it, because I think it's a lot of pressure to put on him to remember when he goes back to school. So I'm not looking forward to September, I don't think. Not looking forward to it. But I've always got a happy smiley face. And we'll always I'm not alone, am I? We're all in this boat. We're all in it. It doesn't matter what struggles or whatever else I've gone through. I bet you there's 10 stories you've recorded that are worse off than mine. I bet you. So I was a typical Sunday. I'd literally come home from work. So my shifts at Asda were 2 a.m. in the morning start to 11 a.m. to begin with, but I just found it was too much. I was trying to run that and my business, trying to keep it together. And I'd drop them down to 7 a.m. finish in the morning. So I'd done a Saturday night into a Sunday morning, And Paul and I had gone and walked the dog. We'd walked the dog and I'd said, oh, do you know, I've got a tummy ache. I either need a poo or it's the wrong time of the month on its way, or I'm going to be sick. And you know what? I wish one of them would hurry up because I don't feel right. So we'd walked home, then we'd had breakfast together and I couldn't finish my second boiled egg, which is not right. And do you know what? I couldn't even finish my cup of tea. So there's something wrong. And I literally left it and took painkillers and went to bed. And I said to Paul that it's not me, because I just carry on. And I went off to bed and I just shut my eyes and almost, as stupid as it sounds, meditated. It's not like me at all, but I just shut my eyes and laid down. Now, the phone kept ringing and it was driving me nuts. And I thought on the third occasion, I've got to answer this, because I'd actually just found out that my father had died the day before. Now, Dad and I hadn't spoken for about 4 years, and not that it makes it any easier, but I didn't quite know how to deal with that. So I knew that the phone ringing was something to do with that, and it was my auntie, bless her, who was just phoning to say, I've got fond memories of your dad and I just wanted to share them, and how are you? And I said to her halfway through this conversation, I'm really sorry, but I just can't concentrate on what you're saying to me. I've got this tummy ache. To which she insisted was stress and upset and angst about my dad, which it wasn't. So I'd gone downstairs to Paul, and do you know what was on my mind was that I'd got to be at work at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that come 4 o'clock in the afternoon there was nobody at Asda. Everybody kind of finishes what they're doing and then they're not back until the evening. And if I'm not going in, how on earth do I phone in sick? And actually, do I phone in sick? Because it's a temporary job and I need this job. So we decided, Paul and I, that we needed to make a decision at a reasonable hour, that I couldn't kind of leave it. And thank goodness for Asda, because I know me and I know that I'd have just gone to bed and I'd have dealt with it. So we did what everybody shouldn't do, and that was use Dr. Google. And we looked at my symptoms and I kind of thought gallstones. And Paul said, you've got an appendicitis. You've absolutely got a classic appendicitis. That's what Dr. Google says. And I went, nah, I'm not a kid. I'm 43. It's not my appendix. But we'd made a decision we weren't going to phone 111 because we thought that they would be absolutely inundated and that wasn't fair. And that 111 we felt might call us an ambulance. And I certainly didn't want to burden the paramedics. So we then thought, well, let's try the walk-in centre on London Road. Because again, we just felt I have to have my arms and legs hanging off before I go into A&E, because the words accident and emergency for me say what it is. So we tried 111. And I honestly, if I'm honest now, on the way down, felt a little like I was in labour. Didn't particularly like the speed bumps, and it was getting quite uncomfortable. And Paul got as far as the door to be greeted by somebody in a mask. And I could see there was lots of pointing and toing and froing, and before I knew it, Paul was back at the car. And he was told basically to go straight to A&E, that the symptoms I was displaying was classic appendicitis and that they couldn't do anything for me. They would assess me and send me. So we got into A&E. Paul got as far as the door and was told to read a sign and accept that, and then left. And basically, I never even read the sign, but I think it was, you've brought your injured party in, please leave. No disrespect, but we need you to go. So I was told to don a mask. I gave them my history, and I turned around to look at A&E to find only, it looked like a building site for starters. There was tape everywhere, and only a handful of people, and every other kind of seat was taped off, so there was only a certain amount of places you could sit. So I sat down, and I was kind of in the fetal position with my head sort of down. And you know how you have a quick gander, don't you, around A&E? Well, you don't look ill. You don't look ill. There was no arms and legs hanging off. But you know what I was actually looking for? I was looking for coffin. and I was looking for, kind of respiratory problems, but nothing like that at all. So me and another person were called through at the same time, and I remember not being able to keep up with them in the corridor as we walked through. And I was sat in A&E for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, counted it. And only because I thought I'd look at, you always, don't you? I wonder how long I'm going to be here then. Look at your watch and see what happens. And I was put into a cubicle quite quickly, and he even said, "I'm really sorry, you're in a lot of pain, aren't you? You can't keep up." Then I was seen quite quickly, and I tell you, within 10 minutes, I'd got morphine given to me. Within half an hour of me being in there, I had been told that the surgeons had been alerted and that they thought it was appendicitis, but they'd like to give me blood tests and scans. Doing the job that I do, or did, as a police officer, there is very quickly a relationship established with other emergency workers, and you just start chatting. It's how it works. They know that there's things they can tell you, they can have a conversation with you. And he was saying that there used to be 800 people a day, now there was 200 people a day. They'd wheedled out those that shouldn't be in A&E, but they were also very worried that they were missing some that should be in A&E. And I could hear from the other cubicles, there was the usual, I've fallen off my bike, I've, got a bad back, I've done this, I've slipped in the shower. And I remember being sent to go and have a wee sample and coming back and could barely walk. And I could see the sister looking at me as if to say, yeah, you shouldn't be in A, we need to get you a bed. And quite quickly I was put on an assessment ward on my own in my own room. I was given a COVID test, which didn't actually come back until after I'd had surgery. Everybody that I dealt with, I only ever saw their eyes. I couldn't almost tell you again what some of them looked like, but not one of them, and I'll go again here, not one of them stood their distance. Not one of them didn't touch me because they couldn't. My hand was held, my hair was stroked, and maybe even more so because Paul couldn't be with me. Nobody could be with me, and I was in a whole heap of pain. Not one of them made me feel like I'd got something that was possibly going to kill them before caring for me first. And they were absolutely amazing. The nurse that gave me the COVID test clearly knew what she was doing, because she went to go and get a plastic apron first and said, "This might make you gag." To which she'd obviously, bless her, been thrown up all over plenty of times first. So the COVID test was done, which was, really unpleasant. Not unpleasant because it made you gag and it was going down your throat, and not unpleasant because it was shoved so far up your nose that I tickled my brain. It was more about the fact it was the same swab that was done on both things. So down your throat, then up your nose. So that wasn't really very pleasant. There was this guy, and I still to this day don't know who he was, that sat in the background of all consultations and meetings with the surgeons, the anaesthetics and everything, writing notes with his mask on. And again, I only got to see his eyes. And his face appeared in surgery and said it was me that was sat, in the corner of the room. And I said, "Oh yeah, well, didn't recognise you." And throughout, he'd kind of been around. And he came to see me after surgery to tell me that not only obviously I'd got an appendicitis, but that it had burst whilst I was in hospital. And the mess that they had to clear up took, a good couple of hours. But as I went into theatre, you know how nervous everybody is, but I actually secretly love operations because it's the best sleep that I ever have. Anyone who knows me knows that I work about 23 hours a day. So I do secretly look forward to surgery just for the rest. But you're still nervous, and I was still in pain. And the surgeons were just, like I said, stroking my hair, a hand on my shoulder. It was everything I needed to feel secure, safe, and everything that my loved ones would have done for me had they been available to. These were complete strangers, and they didn't know whether I had COVID, and yet they carried on regardless. Then I came out of surgery and was obviously in recovery, and then my COVID test came back and I was moved to a clean ward, which was ENT actually. There was 11 staff and 6 patients. I had a whole bay of 6 beds to myself, completely to myself. The care I received was absolutely phenomenal, but the staff were exceptionally tired and very worried about, not now, they'd split the hospital in half, they knew what they were doing, they got the regime in place that they could deal with COVID, non-COVID, not knowing whether you were COVID. But all of those operations had been put to one side and at some point need to return, along with whatever else they're going to deal with in winter. And those guys aren't getting a break. They're not getting a holiday. They're not getting to take their foot off the gas. They are in the trenches and they are in the war zone. And when I came out of hospital, I clapped as loud as I could. I never once felt like I was going to catch anything. Never once. I never once felt that there was any risk to me whatsoever. And I actually should have been in India when my appendix burst. And I should have been working. I should have been the other side of the world. And what if that had happened when it happened? And for me, I don't go to A&E. But the only time I would expect to end up in A&E is that one day your day is going normally and then you get hit awfully. You get in a car accident and then you end up in a, really kind of serious situation. So it was kind of like that, because one minute I was absolutely fine. Then I got a bit of a tummy ache. The next thing I knew, my appendix was being taken out. The nurses never told me they knew it had burst. They asked me how my pain was. And I'd said that I was on about a 4 and that actually, should I be here? I felt like a bit of a fraud. They said, well, it's all right, well, you're still going for surgery in the morning and they'll take a look and see what's going on. They knew damn well that the pain threshold had gone down because my appendix had burst and that it was now more urgent than ever to get it out. But yeah, it was, I feel very fortunate that it was the end of May and not April and not March, because I think that would have been a different situation, as they're still busy trying to deal with everything. I didn't go in with anything COVID related, so I wasn't put at any risk with other patients that had it, where we all had to kind of either be together or isolated. But at one point they didn't know whether I had it or not, and as I said, they honestly put me and my care and how I felt, my emotional status, before everything else. And I absolutely applaud them for it.
It's that thing about I'll always just crack on and make it work. And I have a feeling that whatever happens, when this does reach its point where we get back to some kind of normality, you'll come back more kick-ass than ever.
I'll always come back more kick-ass than ever, because that is me. Like I said, I've never been out of work. I needed to take a lot of time of rest. That was my worry. I was now recovering from surgery. And people always say to me, you slow down, you don't do this, don't do too much, no. And I always work hard. I work 20 times harder than some other people. There are people out there who work harder than I do. But that's my level of work. That's what I'm used to. So when I slow down and stop, I'm not daft enough to not listen to my body. And if my appendix burst, something was telling me I really shouldn't be working. So I did. I took the time to rest. And it was just tough. I then felt ready that, okay, I've got to do something about it. So I designed some new products and noticed that everybody was at home baking very simple stuff. So rather than the complicated stuff that I would usually show people, I came out with something aimed at a very basic level. And that's gone mental. So I sell bottles of these. It's like a chocolate drip, basically. You drizzle on a cake. And I've sold 1,000 bottles in a month. It's gone mental. But again, I never sit on my laurels and go, well, that's all right then, because I don't know whether anybody's going to buy any tomorrow. So what am I now doing for tomorrow? So I've pivoted everything. I've taken stuff online and I'm starting to encourage people to buy tutorials, but I put loads out there for free just to say, you know, come and join in the fun. It's for everybody. I'm trying to remain exciting to the public so that they might want to come back, or can I gain more followers? Can I interest people in more things? But I've always got my eye on the job ads, and I will do anything to put food on the table. And I believe that there are opportunities for everybody. Yes, there are hundreds of thousands of redundancies and jobs being lost, but there are also other opportunities where businesses can't cope because of the new demand. That new demand might be lots of incinerated waste that needs removing from a hospital. It might be that we need more postal people to deliver stuff in a different way. It could be absolutely anything, and I'll turn my hand at anything. So whatever it is that needs doing, that's where you'll find me. Until I can make cakes again. I wasn't always a cake decorator. I've been a stock controller for a supermarket. I've been a police officer. There's so many things that, you know, have kind of always done or could come out of it. And who knows what skills I may pick up next. There's one thing for sure is that I've done, I can't tell you how much my fingers have bled to put this roof over our heads, and I ain't losing it anytime soon. So if that's the motivation that we kind of keep, then that's, you know, one thing. Very fortunate that my husband isn't furloughed and he's in a job that he can work from home, and not a job that is ever going to see redundancies. I've said it now, haven't I? Touch wood. So I only need a supportive role where, you know, I'm not the only one that's paying those bills. But, you know, I always also think that there are people worse off than me. What can I do to help those others? You know, I can give time. If I end up volunteering at places that need it, or I don't know what the future is going to hold. I am really worried. I'm worried about the virus not disappearing anywhere anytime soon. I'd be less worried if it wasn't for Daniel, because I'd let it pass through us and think that, you know, we're going to be okay. I'm worried about school in September and what that will look like. I'm not worried about us as a family. There are lots of people that have struggled in lockdown and had serious mental health issues, and you know, I can't relate to that. I honestly can't, because my husband's such a recluse, or we call him the grumpy bugger, that he's happy if he doesn't have to see another person or smile at another person, and he's honestly really happy. Daniel is missing social interaction sports-wise. He loves his sports. But I've given him a job of training me, so we're going out training. We live on a country park and we're enjoying it. We have a dog that every morning we have to get up for that keeps us absolutely sane. Matthew is my social butterfly, but he is constantly FaceTiming with his friends, and we're letting them meet up socially distant, and they go for a walk and sit outside here and have a drink and a slice of cake. Of course, there's always cake at our house. And that new normal I can cope with. I don't know who's going to see this, but I can kind of cope that we don't have to see the in-laws, and that other family members are kept at bay. I can cope that we have an excuse not to go to parties that we don't want to go to. I don't miss going out for meals. I don't understand people being desperate to go on holiday. I don't miss travelling. And I know there are going to be people that have interviewed that are desperate to get away, that are desperate to be somewhere else. But our family unit, we're just a family unit, and we do everything together, and we've always made our own entertainment. And do you know, working for yourself, I don't actually put aside money for holidays, as awful as that is. Work pays for holidays, so we will go on a teaching trip and I get to take the kids and we don't make any money from it. So yes, they've stopped, but we're going to be all right. We're going to be all right without holidays. We're going to be okay without meals out. None of that bothers me. I would love nothing more than Christmas Day without major presents, with just the family around us and doing absolutely bugger all. So I'm kind of hoping that bit continues. But I worry, try not to worry about the economy, because I'm a little bit of I'm in la la fluff land is what I live in. I live in Planet Cake, where everything's sweet and everything's pretty. And I just pretend that everything's going to be okay, because everybody always needs cake. So I'm hoping that my wonderful optimism will be enough to get us through that one. So I don't know where that's going to take us. And we'll have to ride that one and see where it does. But all I know is that I'm not afraid of rolling up my sleeves and doing a bit of hard work, a lot of hard work. And I will go out and find something to support this family and hope that we come out the other side and don't get it, really. I think the world has changed forever. And it'll be something that I can imagine our kids telling stories about, and the great-great-grandkids going, ugh, are they on about COVID again? Like we talk about the war, don't we? Bless them, they want to tell the war stories. But yeah, I'm very, very honoured that I've got to share my COVID story. It's something that I won't forget in a hurry. And hopefully when I'm 90, I won't bore everybody with it. And I think I've learnt a lot about me and what we can all achieve as a family. And that I know if, Paul and I can get through this, then I know we're going to be married forever. We've been married for 20 years now. But not one crossword. Not one crossword during lockdown. Which I think is an absolute achievement, and we're the closer family for it. And yeah, I'm grateful for those things.